I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. I'm going to recognize Michael Becker and Mimi Zamer.
Morton.
Zamer. Morton.
No, Zamer
Zamer's
is
gone,
part of it.
like out of the picture.
Yeah, he's out of
He's out of the picture.
don't use.
I will waive the rules of procedure, and we have an addition that I have for the meeting tonight. And I think I will put it after the Historical Society because Dan is not here. So the addition is to talk about the River Road Ice Jam, which we need to. So I'm going to put that as C, River Road.
Okay.
Are there any other, additions to the,
I do not have any.
Not for me.
any changes to the agenda order? No.
I don't have any.
Do we know if Gabby's coming tonight?
I have not heard from her.
So we had the minutes of the regular meeting of January 14th, 2019 to approve.
I so move
You
that
so
we
moved.
accept them.
Thank you.
And I will second that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Since Richard's on the phone, we need to actually take.
Oh, sorry, Veranda?
I moved it.
No, you moved it. Are you in favor
So,
of
because
the roll
Richard,
call?
you have to do roll call because.
Yes.
Gordon?
I do.
Richard?
Aye.
Sheila? Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
We'll get this down one of these years. So, do we have a general update on the highway?
Very general, I guess not so general because I spoke to Dan late on Thursday. So they have been continuing to work on equipment and dealing with issues with two of the trucks. One day they'll be working, another day they won't be. They've obviously been dealing with continuation of ice. At the end of last week on Thursday and Friday, they had to do with a couple of ice jams. One over on Bonnievale Road and one down off of Coolidge Highway in
Slate Rock?
Slate Rock Road, yep. And then on Friday, they were dealing with the one that Sheila will discuss later over on River Road. But that's everything that's been taking up their time. Been using up lots of salt. And we still have a couple more months to go, so.
Overtime?
Yep, they've been putting in
Yep.
overtime. Danny's been trying to do his best to balance between letting the guys have sleep and making sure residents are safe on the road. So,
Okay, thank you.
They've been doing a great job.
They have,
You know, I
as
just-
usual.
I mean, and also, every time I go to another town, you know, especially into Massachusetts, I just really appreciate the standard that they hold themselves to.
I agree.
Yeah. The next thing on the agenda is the BCTV contract, and I looked at it this weekend. And they sent us a contract as we asked, and it seems to make a lot of sense, but I wondered if we should sign it or postpone it until after town meeting day, because there's a separate warrant to approve the $1,800 for town meeting day. And if we don't have the approval, then we don't really have a contract with them, unless we want to.
I think that's a good idea.
Thank you, Richard.
and in sending this to me, Trowbridge did acknowledge that we have to wait till after town meeting day to finalize this.
Okay.
So
Oh.
Good.
she does
So,
understand that.
I think we should move that agenda item, to an agenda item in the first meeting in March, after town meeting day. I mean,
Good idea.
thank you, Richard. The next item of business is the Historical Society insulation quotes. And let me think. I'm going to get back to my sent email to Mimi. So Mimi Morton is here to talk about this.
Hi, Richard.
Do you want to come up to the table, Mimi?
I'd love to.
Thank you.
Please join us.
So what I know about this, to sort of maybe potentially abbreviate this, is that we have 3 separate quotes from builders, installers or something like that,
There's 2 quotes.
three
Two
quotes.
quotes, but.
3 quotes from builders and 1 from Farnham.
Excuse me,
Okay?
yes.
So we have quotes from 2 separate providers, 3 from Farnham's, 3 from builders and 1 from Farnham. The builders installed products combined 3 quotes total $10,000, almost $11,000. It doesn't include tax. They state in their quote that existing clapboards have to be removed and replaced by others, whereas it looks like either the Farnham response to the proposal wouldn't need to remove the clapboards, or the cost is included in their quote, which is much higher. It's a quote of $17,613.
I think they're reinstalling it because it says, remove selective siding, drill through the sheathing, insulate using dense packed cellulose, and
So
reinstall
they've
siding.
got the insulation included in that $6,500, which is not included in the $11,000 of builders, basically.
Yeah.
Farnham separates out the tax, and they also mentioned that there's a 50-minute fire barrier paint that's not in the builder's quote that I could discover. So, so those were my questions about the quote, the price quotes, the general questions. I had, Richard,
Yeah?
do you want to put us on mute?
Oh, okay.
If the Historical Society spends somewhere between $11,000 and $17,000, what, and there's an estimated cost in the, of $68,000 for the proposal, what would not get done in that $68,000, because it didn't include the,
Well, this is, I just, Richard, I'm just passing around a document that I made up, and to try to address what Sheila's talking about, and I'm going to read it, if I may.
yeah,
And there is a kind of a fluffy beginning, but we don't think it's that way. Guilford Historical Society's request to insulate museum walls, attic, and crawl space and upgrade lighting constitutes our first steps in increasing the building's utility to the town for decades to come, not only the receptacle of Guilford historic objects, but the vibrant center of cultural education for present and future generations of Guilford school children and adults. The Farnham estimate appears to us to provide a more complete detailing of the building's insulation needs than does the builder's installed products estimate. And I would just refer you to the estimates as Sheila has described them. Gary Swindler, who was formerly with Efficiency Vermont, recommends that Farnham perform a blower door test, because that is the only way we will be able to get a rebate from Efficiency Vermont before the work is done. Gary will help us navigate the EVT rebate application process. We will very likely need storm windows, which the building does not have. Gary will help us source the best windows for our purpose at the most reasonable price. He's been really helpful so far. Farnham supplies them. He's not sure they're the best person to do that work, but again, we've only had one walkthrough with him. Victor Johnson, who is famously he's not always available, let's put it that way, but he is working on this. Victor will work with his lighting consultant to provide a cost estimate of installing LED lighting from sources approved by Efficiency Vermont. And I know what those sources are. Rebates thus obtained from EVT should reduce overall cost to the town. After these improvements in heating and lighting, we will address foundation repair, exterior doors, roof repairs as detailed in the capital needs assessment. Even with the addition of insulation costs not included in the capital needs assessment, we do not estimate spending more than the $68,000 that has been set aside for the building. And then not because I want only to spend the amount in the list below, but because I wanted to reassure people that we could begin this project in a, a feasible way. The blower test, I know from experience, is probably around $300. It might even be less for that small building. The Farnham quote is $17,613. The exterior doors, $430. That's the capital assessment. Storm windows, again, capital assessment, $12,800, which seems unfortunately pretty reasonable. Interior lighting, I think we can do better than $2,500, but there you go. Roof repair, again, capital needs assessment, totals in at $600. And foundation, which would be the last thing we would consider, is, I think, quite an enormous $37,500, which would be the last thing we would undertake. This comes out to $61,743, which is approximate based on the capital needs assessment estimates. And these repairs do not include certain less critical repairs in the needs assessment, which we intend to address after the above are completed. Things like exterior door lighting, the front porch, trim on the outside of the building, painting on the outside of the building. And the way we're looking at it is, if we run up to our cap, we'll raise money and we'll just manage. But the most important part is the making the building usable for, because it's warm enough and light enough for school children and researchers, and that's what it looks like to us.
Thank you. Any questions? I still have a couple questions. So you've worked with Gary.
We have, and
And-
he's very interested in helping us navigate the website, the efficiency.
EVT, yeah.
Yeah,
And-
which,
And does he, do you need to do that before we approve, or before you start
yeah,
anything else?
yeah.
So were we to approve either one of the proposals tonight, to select one of those two? And by the way, they worked for 3, they only got 2 responses, right?
Right, there isn't anybody
We
else
tried to get 3
around.
responses. So we have the 2 per our policies. Were we to approve it, you could not go ahead with the actual work
Mhm.
until you work out some deal with Efficiency Vermont?
Well, until we have the blower door test, because any work that's done would compromise the ability for the blower door test to show what it needs to show, which is how leaky the building is. Once you start working on the building, you can't do, you've compromised.
It's like a before and after.
Yeah, you
test.
want a before and after test. So that's what we would do first. And I would myself recommend getting that from Farnham. And then I'm hoping, our recommendation is that we proceed with Farnham, but it's up to the select board.
And there's a certain list of contractors only that can do that for Efficiency Vermont purposes, right? So you checked on their website, because Farnham, I believe, is one of them.
What I was gonna do first was find out what you people want, and then go back to Farnham and talk to them about Efficiency Vermont. Make sure that we are following the proper path.
Good.
Okay.
So I have another question. If you do the foundation work, are these things in order of, would you do the foundation work last?
Well, I put that last only because it's so big.
So,
Yeah.
so not knowing anything about, not knowing much about construction compared to other people in this room. If you start doing foundation work after you've done the insulation in the windows and taken the clapboards off and then put them back on, are you not gonna get everything out of whatever it's called, alignment, jig, whatever? Would you not wanna do foundation work before most of the other work? I don't know.
That's a great question. I would have to talk, we'd have to talk to a builder.
Mhm.
And I would start by,
Maybe I had the same question.
I would
So-
start by talking to Scott, because he's doing work in town. I would ask him, I would ask Rick. They would have to look, excuse me.
No, that's okay. It's, to me, it's critical to have your footprint, especially in an old building like this, solid as you work your way up into the air, meaning to the attic. So, I mean, for all those points,
For the foundation, look at 37,500.
Yes.
well, that was based off the capital needs
The
quote,
CNA
correct?
thing, yeah. I'm just, so when we were talking in December about project management, one of the questions I think would have been the sequence of repairs and improvements. Not being asked by a novice. But, I just think if part of, if the Farnham quote is $6,600 for insulating, taking the siding off, installing it, and putting the dense pack in there. And then things shift, and then you've got windows.
I hear you. I
feel like we're gonna make this a problem for this year's school use if the building isn't insulated. But if it's done in a logical construction project sequence, it will be better over the longer term.
I hear you. I can talk to Rick, who is basically being the project manager
Yeah.
on the community center, and we're both at the same place actually
Yeah.
with our projects.
Yeah.
And that might be very helpful, and if he, and then we would have to find a builder to work on that if it appears that that's critical and needs to come first. We would need
It really depends on how bad that foundation is.
Yeah.
The capital need, this number of 37.5 is, it's expensive, but it's not outrageous. But it suggests that there's work that needs to be done to the foundation. So I think it's pretty significant.
Gabby, do you happen to know what went into the assessment of the foundation? I mean, was it just...
I didn't handle the capital needs assessment. Peter
I don't
Sheila did,
remember,
so.
yeah.
Oh.
So it was just a number that we got, and there's a description
sorry.
There's a
probably.
description in the capital
Yeah.
needs assessment
There
itself
is.
if you
I
want more
haven't looked it
detail.
up. I'm sure Amy had it.
And he did also, the engineer noted that he couldn't fully see everything because of the.
Oh, I
10-year
remember that. I just didn't remember what he was able to ascertain from the level of assessment that he did.
And I guess my only other concern, just looking at these two estimates for the insulation that we're talking about, I mean, they're pretty significantly different, in my opinion. What I have a struggle with is understanding, what's involved in both of them. They may not be that different, but one seems to have more information
Gabby, are
on
you
what is going to be
familiar with
done.
builders?
I'm not, and I didn't see, I don't know what you asked them to get a quote on, so I'm not sure what,
Yeah.
it's hard to compare without knowing what.
What the RFP was? Yeah.
So I'm a little in the dark on what
Yeah.
we would be judging this on right
You
now.
have the CNA there, Mimi? Not the quotes, the capital needs, the assessment.
Well, yeah, and are we, do you want to?
That was just like, what did they say about the foundation
Yeah,
there?
cracking and settlement of the foundation walls was noted. Additionally, there's been some inward displacement of the foundation at the rear of the building. Yeah, it looks bad. Steps should be taken to minimize the accumulation of moisture at the rear, which could result in further deteriorations. Immediate repair to the damaged block is recommended. Future replacement of the foundation should be planned for.
So your estimate on the foundation is repairs, not,
Well, it says all
Replacement.
cracks in the foundation, all cracks should be sealed and the walls monitored for signs of further movement. At the exterior brick portion of the foundation, the cracks in the masonry should be sealed. There's bricks back there. The framing of this building can best be described as post and beam. Where visible, the joists, girders, etc. are in good to fair condition. However, with force, and then there's bits of the roof, all members could not be examined. No dry rot, blah, blah. No insect activity evident. Crawl
So
space.
it doesn't, so these are the observations, not the recommendations.
No, the recommendation is for $37,000 of foundation work, and I don't know
What that
what that
entails,
means,
yeah.
no. Unless,
Well, it's more involved in my very expert opinion, but that it's more than just filling cracks and sealing water from coming in. The bowing, you said one of the north or south side of the building is bowing in. You know, that's probably in need of correcting if it is significant, as you just said. So there's got to be something more involved based
well,
on
they,
that
what
number.
they, it's a crawl space, and so
Yeah.
there's evidence of water that comes in the spring and dampness in the earth floor, and they say that the only way to correct this condition may be to excavate the exterior foundation walls and apply a membrane waterproofing, drain tiles.
Yep.
So in both
That's where, yeah.
Yeah, that
both
makes more
quoters,
sense.
both responders talk about sealing off the crawl space. So you're gonna seal off the crawl space and then have to unseal it to fix the foundation?
Well,
You can comment, Michael.
Farnham's putting
Yes,
in.
I was thinking, Michael, do you hear what
Yeah,
we?
I mean, I wasn't sure when the appropriate time to
Yeah,
speak was for the public, but just raise your hand or.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm right there with you as far as the folks who are concerned about doing the foundation first. I mean, I think that is absolutely the way you would want to go is fix your base first. And-
Speaker,
Say that again, Richard?
could Michael speak into the speaker?
He's
Oh.
basically saying that it makes sense to him to start from the foundation and work up and out, I think.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like, I mean, I don't know exactly how everybody else on the select board feels, but it seems to me that this is a matter of being sensible about the whole project and how one thing follows from another as opposed to opening it from February through
Right.
February, March, and April, spending $17,000 to open it for some grades right now.
I hear you.
And then not being able to, and then having to undo some of that work in the future.
I'm not going to freak out about this. It seems that it makes sense to start with the foundation, and what we should do is get quotes for, you know, stabilizing the foundation
Yeah.
and making it as dry as
Would
you
it make
can.
sense- Would it make sense to get a professional builder, to pay a professional builder to make an assessment of the staging of this renovation?
You mean a project manager?
Yes,
Uh-huh,
not Rick.
but not Rick. Well,
Why not, Rick? Just because he has no time?
is there
He's
like
doing
a
this
he's my
big-
husband.
He's been doing the BBC thing.
He is,
Rick is very, I mean, someone who's certified, has a license to make assessments like this.
Say that Gabby's having a
There's no
reaction.
licenses for construction in Vermont,
Mhm.
so
what would
there's
you
no
recommend?
one you can get that's licensed.
I'm suggesting someone who is a professional advisor about staging a construction, a renovation project like this. It seems to me that we should just say that we should deal with the foundation first, and unless, we have expert advice. That's the way I would think it would go with the foundation first, but I just think that we need someone to stage this for us.
Yeah. Maybe I would not have asked this question had I not seen this whole thing tonight, so. But I think
I'm
it's-
not, this is cool. I would like to, I'd love to have somebody's recommendation on who they would consider an okay person. I mean, I know that Rick would be happy to take a look at this. Maybe he would say that he thought we should hire an expert, Richard. I really don't know.
Well, I think that Rick can say whether he's out of his depth, and he is handling a comparable project across the street.
Yeah.
And he's available, relatively speaking, immediately. And
How long are you going away for?
2 weeks. This could not happen before we leave.
No. But I think that's a good plan, if Rick's willing.
Yeah, I
To
mean,
take
he
a
would,
peek at
he
it.
doesn't know, that, you know, he's not gonna talk money, but he could
Right.
certainly talk
Okay.
staging, absolutely.
Yeah,
He's very, Richard, are you there, dear? He's very competent in
Yeah,
doing,
that's-
he's,
That's fine,
It's
that's
just this
fine.
is the guide, right? This is the
okay,
guide.
I think we could ask him to do that, and if he doesn't feel that he is able to do that, he would let us know.
I mean, I would, my suggestion is that the CNA says that we need to do this, this, and that, and we need someone to say, well, which, does this come before that, or does that come before this?
I hear you absolutely, I understand.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's what I've written down here.
So I think we will not take up the quotes per se tonight,
Right.
because it could be some time before, it could be, you'll come back in 3 or 4 weeks and say, we're gonna go ahead with the insulation, or it could be that you'll say, we have to look at in the capital needs assessment, they had a year-by-year amount of money for the things that they estimated being done. So if the major thing was the foundation, and Peter just pointed out to me, that's $41,000 in 2020, 2021, we may have to like consider.
Well, FY '21 technically.
Yeah, FY '21, we may have to consider where else how we would move other things around to get that done first if it needs to be done.
Okay,
So I think we should appreciate, Farnham and Builders' responses, but that it's a slightly premature.
yeah, it's premature, so that's fine. I will go back and see if I can find somebody to organize our renovations into the proper path, the proper
Yeah.
sequence.
Yep,
Okay.
that's good.
Thank you for taking all this time, Mimi, to respond to the questions and come up with this, because I think it's been a really good process and a good discussion. I know you're not getting the building insulated for school this year.
That doesn't bother me. I'm learning so much.
So are we.
No, I mean, I know 0, and so now I know more than 0.
Ian Keel, Brattleboro, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I shouldn't speak at this, but I was just curious if the board would consider your blower test now, because for those to be accurate, you need the cold temperatures, and that if you establish the baseline of what is needed now, again,
Yeah.
that work what do you call it, remedy, it may not happen for a while.
That should happen regardless.
But if
The rest
you,
of it.
as a board, felt that you wanted to
I thought we were
authorize
doing
that to go ahead, I just
Thank you, Ian.
well, I
That's
get
a very good
concerned
point.
because, suddenly
Yeah.
it's February and you get
And you get
a
a
hot
February
spell
thaw.
or
We
something.
get the January thaw in February.
But I do think that they ought to go forward with
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
I couldn't agree more. I thought we were.
Okay.
And so Mimi, can Gary be helpful in enabling you to set up the sequence?
Yeah, I'll get together with him and with Rick and with our buildings and grounds people so that we all know. That'll be fine. I mean, Gary is already working with Rick on the community center. So
Right.
we'll just, and if we need somebody else who's somehow, more qualified or better at this or has more time or feels better about it, we will get that person. But may I get the permission of the select board to get the blower test, which I believe requires calling Farnham, if I may?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to make a motion?
Oh, sure. I move that the Historical Society put in motion the blower test and that we support them in doing it.
Second.
Richard seconded.
Good. All in favor?
Okay, so I'm going to call a roll again. Veranda?
Yes.
Gabby?
Yes.
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Sheila, aye. Okay, that passed. Mimi, thank you so much for all your time on this. This is, we've all, it could have been simpler if we just said yes, but I don't think it's the best. thing.
No. This is better. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
Richard.
vacation.
Yeah, and thank your board for us,
You
that.
betcha.
The next thing on the agenda is the River Road Ice Dam, and this is something that we added at the beginning of the meeting. So on Thursday, Friday, the main, I learned both from Dan and Steve Lemke that the main river channel to and from the bridge to Michael Baram's house is a sea of ice as far as you can see looking north and south. And he had, at this point, he had no access to his house because the river went outside of its normal channel and shut the bridge off. I haven't seen this, I've seen some pictures.
See you later.
The ice is currently about 6 to 10 inches from the bottom of the bridge. Steve Lemke was helping Michael, and then he was also talking to Green Mountain Power, and the utility poles, there was a utility box that was knocked off a pole, and then the poles and the roads are very vulnerable to something in the immediate future, like the degradation of River Road or loss of the utility poles. And what GMP said on Friday was, quote, "You better hope you don't lose those power poles or people are going to be out of power for a long time."
Oh my God.
The ice tore a utility box off one of the poles, which was the reason that Green Mountain Power was out there. And they're still working on repairing that box. So Danny was to have MT3 go out there and look at breaking up the ice and getting the river back into its normal channel. And Scott Jensen, the river engineer for the state, was down and approved it. And today we got their written approval to remove ice and floating debris. Danny was also to get MT3 to provide an estimate to open the channel.
So, because of the short-term turnover, MT3 did not submit a written quote at the moment. They gave a verbal quote to Dan. They would not be able to, if engaged, first of all, they would not be able to begin the work until Friday. And then secondly, it was difficult for them to give an exact quote, but Mike said it would not exceed $3,000. They wouldn't really know the extent of work needed until they started working on it.
And I'm just gonna look at the weather because one of the things we were concerned about was whether there was gonna be a thaw between now and when they might start the work, and also how, doesn't look like it, not a chance. And then how to get the equipment, Mike's big piece of equipment there and on site.
Dan and Mike both noted, because they were both down there at different times today, that the water levels have dropped and it is flowing normally. It's high, but it's flowing normally and not dangerous at the moment. Dan also is planning on speaking with the landowner in more detail tomorrow about the situation. Dan did want the select board to know he was not sure if this is specifically the town's responsibility.
That's what I was gonna ask.
And he was concerned about setting a precedent and doing this on a private property.
But, I mean, we have yes, it's a unique situation because it is affecting one individual's property, but it is the potential of affecting the utility poles and degrading River Road itself, according to Dan
But I think
and-
someone has to
and
make that
Scott.
assessment for the town, that if the town doesn't move forward with this plan, then that is definitely gonna happen.
That's a risk, yeah.
Well, but, I don't know, to me, it's.
So when I talked to Dan over the weekend, he said that was basically what everybody was agreed to when, I keep calling him the new Todd Manise, but whoever the river engineer is now.
Scott Jensen.
Scott Jensen, yeah.
Came, that it was, I don't think there's any dispute that should there be any more melting or ice damming, that it would definitely erode away the road. So I don't think that's actually in dispute at all, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Good.
So I would say that if it's gonna eat away the road and cause people to have, not be able to pass without a 12 to 15 mile detour,
Detours.
then I would suggest we do it and save ourselves angry public and
Yeah, no,
for
no, no,
something
you're
that
missing
we
my point.
repair
we
That's-
present that we know can happen.
I'm not suggesting we don't do it, I'm not suggesting, I'm asking a question. Is it, I didn't know that, it's a new piece of information you just shared with us, Gabby, thank you. I guess my other question is with, if, how much is the river gotta rise before this could potentially happen again?
6 inches.
6 inches? Wow.
I don't, yeah, 6.
And that's with the ice jam in place?
Yeah.
I'm curious why this has never happened before. It only
Michael said it
happened
had not
because of
happened in
this last.
52 years.
Right, it happened because we had this deep freeze and then we had the thaw and therefore the ice let go and jammed up a specific area.
And we had 1.5 inches of rain.
Yes, we had.
And we had 1.5 inches of rain.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, how can, this could happen a lot of other places too.
So if it had only impacted a property owner,
Yeah, I'm not trying to isolate one versus 100 people, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to understand the significance for the town of Guilford past this one little spot. Because the Green River the Green River runs quite a ways, and an ice jam's an ice jam. If you look at the whetstone filing into the Connecticut River, you can see that, I've never seen that visual in the time that I've lived here, so I think it could be more significant than we realize in other places, that's all.
yeah, I think, so the fact that this happened to affect a private property owner, I think is incidental to the danger to the town along the river road. And what other dangers are we looking at? Because as Michael said, he's owned that property for 52 years and it has never done like this before, so.
And so let me be clear, Sheila, I read, Steve's emails about it, but I'm curious, there's the person's, his bridge, his footbridge and his land, but then there are also those power poles.
Right.
Which, that in addition to the road, could have impact on a whole bunch of
a whole community, a whole neighborhood,
neighbors. So clearly it's, the town has a compelling interest
Yes.
in maintaining safe power for the people in that area.
Yeah, so I think, so we know that it's not a crisis, that we have enough cold weather time, there's not gonna be a big thaw this week. Do we want to ask for other quotes other than Mike Kachuk, or are we pretty satisfied that he generally gives us a really good price?
Are we required to get?
It's under $3,000, it's $1,500 or more, we're supposed to get 3 quotes, right?
That's correct.
Assuming that once again, everybody's really busy, and we might.
The select board also, based off of the town policy, the select board can also make an exception to a situation
Yeah.
if they so deem. But someone would need to make a motion to make an exception for this and then vote on this after that.
I think that there's a compelling reason to go with Mike Kachuk's group, so I would move that we do that.
Just the other point that Dan made when I spoke to him this evening is that Scott Johnson did say that he felt that Mike's quote was reasonable for the work that needed doing.
So it would be not
just-
greater, 3,000, less than or equal to $3,000.
Again, that's Mike's verbal on this.
Yeah.
I know I'm holding Mike one way or the other, but.
But, well, it will be on the record.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. All in favor, Veranda?
Aye.
Gabby?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Sheila, aye. Thank you. So, now I need a motion to go ahead with Mike's proposal and get the work done as soon as possible. We just
Go ahead
waived
with
the,
that proposal.
sorry,
I move that we go ahead with the proposal from Mike and Chuck.
to remove the
Ice jam.
ice and
The ice
floating
jam.
debris at a cost of $3,000 or less.
Well, that's the verbal.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, are
That's-
we,
yeah.
do we have to?
He's gonna let us know if it's gonna cost more than that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Veranda. All in favor? No. Veranda?
Aye.
Gabby?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Sheila, aye. Thank you, everybody. Okay. So for old business, we have new website update, but in fact, it's not the update of the website. It is a discussion about, where's my papers? Social media policy as it relates to,
Did we not approve a social media
okay,
policy?
so we
that-
approved a social media policy in, at the May 14th meeting, 2018. We adopted it. It is, however, not on the website, Peter. And so I was working off a draft version of that. At that time, so that's one thing. Second thing, we had from Eric Jones, who's been working on our Facebook page and the town website page, an open Facebook policy or a closed Facebook policy. And our adopted policy already calls for an open policy. So I looked at the draft policy that Eric gave us. I didn't even consider the closed policy, which means all we can do is post and nobody can respond. There's no interaction whatsoever. I did look first at what we learned from Jim Barlow, which was, it is a, let me see. Facebook can be considered a limited public forum, much as the much as a select board meeting is. People get to come in, respond when asked, and are, you know, have certain rules of procedure, governance. And so in the meeting that we talked, at the workshop that I was with Jim Barlow, he said, the Facebook page is the beginning of a two-way communication process because we can receive feedback on what's posted. It's from the community and also increase public participation, which is our big goal now for communications in town, for expanding communications. And this, excuse me. He strongly advised that we establish rules in advance to limit discussion to certain topics and speakers and times, much as we do for the select board meeting. So I looked at section 5 of our draft of our social media policy, which I do not know if people were able to look at before the meeting.
I saw it.
You saw it now, Richard? Thank you.
Yep.
And there are 11, the issue that is germane to tonight's discussion are the prohibitions. Comment by the general public shall be allowed on limited social public media forums only when consistent with the provisions of this policy. And we submitted 11 provisions. We approved 11 provisions in our policy. There are 8 in the proposed policy that draft that Eric submitted to us. Has anybody else read or looked at or analyzed this, or shall I keep talking?
You can keep talking. I don't feel as if I'm up to speed on it enough to make a definitive decision myself.
Well, what, is there a decision to be made?
There will be,
We passed-
I'm gonna,
We passed the policy, right?
we passed the policy. I'm going to recommend that we need to amend it slightly, but I didn't know if anybody else had considered any of the implications of what we already passed and compared it with what Eric had submitted to us.
I did not compare the two, so that was the piece
I
I'm
didn't
missing,
compare.
but I'm comfortable.
Okay, so are people, would you like me to go, Gabby,
Go
did you
ahead.
have a chance to do anything or not?
I looked at what was sent in the materials.
Okay, so I have done a little work.
I'm familiar with your editing. I have looked at that.
Okay, and so those were the edits that were in the policy that was adopted, and they were not, one of them was not addressed, which was noticing that the select board does not need to be neutral or even-handed when presenting information, even on the town website. So that, and the question was why? And the answer is because government needs to speak in order to govern and may use media to communicate its views to citizens. When it does, it need not include opposing views. So I'm thinking specifically of the flood and fluvial erosion hazard ordinance, that if we, so far, when I've been communicating on Front Porch Forum and Facebook about this, I've been saying, here's what a yes vote means, here's what a no vote means, without saying, your select boards, you voted unanimously to adopt this ordinance, and here's our defense. But we could, in future communications, take, just use as, publicize our position more broadly if we wanted to. And say the select board's view on this is it should be a no vote. This is not, I'm not discussing flood and fluvial erosion hazard here, I'm simply using that as an example.
As a sort of case
The
study.
select board could actually take a position and publish it on Facebook, on our Facebook page or on our website page, because it is our way of speaking to those that we govern, quote unquote. So I wanted to raise that issue. I also wanted to say that this isn't urgent, and so what I can do is take the 11 points that we had in constraints and the 8 that Eric posted, which are, some of them are consistent, some of them are complete duplicates, and some of them are not, and just like summarize them and say, here's my proposal for amending this, and we could vote on it next meeting if we wanted to do that.
I appreciate that. I think that's the right way to go.
And that makes more sense to me too, personally.
I will do that.
I know it's more work for you.
Yes.
But I mean, reading through what I saw today is fine.
Yeah.
But we've already got a policy in place, so how do we?
Yeah, it took me a while. I didn't realize it until I went back to the meeting minutes that we had actually adopted it, because I had not found it on the website, so. Okay, so.
Yeah, and one thing that we should remember is that to post that policy where it's appropriate to post it.
Yep, I think Peter's getting the hint. Sorry, now I'm looking.
It was up there at one point, but
It's-
I'll have to
it's
look
not
into
there
why.
now.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into why it's not up there at the moment.
Okay, I have lost my agenda. Oh, here it is. There you go.
It's finance.
The warrants.
So, Michael, here ends our discussions,
Right.
and the next thing is just the pro forma stuff, and then an executive session if you want to excuse yourself.
Sure.
The warrants are, Gordon, you've looked at the warrants.
I've looked at them. Gabby, did you look at them?
Yeah,
Would you like to?
go for it.
Thanks for coming, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll make the following motion to pay the following warrants. Payroll week ending 1/20/19 for $6,177.24. Payroll week ending 1/27/19 for $7,380.32. Expense warrant number 1914 for $25,159.75. And expense warrant number FW14 for $216, for a grand total of $38,933.31. Out of expense warrant 1911, the 25, which is our biggest, it's primarily half of that, almost half of it is salt, not quite. And the other thing that stood out to me was work that has been done on our fleet of equipment. So those are the two primary things.
Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you, Richard. Veranda?
Aye.
Gabby?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Richard?
aye.
Sheila, aye. Thank you. Before we entertain a motion,
Well, we've got to sign
we have
all
a
of these.
communication, and
Yes.
I have a question about our general ledger. 003, the general budget, which is Our current use funds are at 82% of what we anticipated, and our pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes program, is at receipts are 88% of what we anticipated. Do you know if we are anticipating any more, or is that what we're gonna get for this year?
Actually, last week I asked Lisa to look into that because I did not know that relates to lister activities, and I have not received a response as of today.
Okay. So, could you give us an, add that just as an update on the next agenda?
Yep.
Because I think everything else looks really good in the budget, but I did not understand why we were
Yep.
20% less on most receipts.
Yep, I did inquire and I will follow up with her
Thank you.
on Wednesday.
And you said we have a communication?
We do have one communication from the Broadbrook Range, would like to announce their annual pre-town meeting. It will be happening on Thursday, 21st of February at 7 PM at the Broadbrook Community Center. All members of the public are welcome to participate. This is the only opportunity for voters to hear details of articles that will be presented at the town and school meetings, and to discuss them in more detail and ask questions, as well as for candidates who are running for office to introduce themselves to the public.
Thank you.
Hello?
What?
Oh, I lost you for a moment.
Okay, so I have a question. The school, I'm assuming the school budget has not been submitted to the town report?
They have not submitted a budget, period.
And have they submitted a report to the town?
Parts of one.
So what happens with taxes, et cetera, if there's no
That is
budget to act
a
on?
question that many people have been asking, and none of us here in the office have an answer to this.
Do we know where to get an answer?
People have been trying, and, I mean, the school board doesn't have an answer.
Just seems to me like that's a huge chunk of our taxes, like 60-something%, that we don't know anything about.
That is correct. So, I mean, it is technically the school's responsibility to call a special meeting to vote on the budget, since it will not be at town meeting.
Okay.
So, and they have
Can the
to,
select board send a letter to the school board asking for them to produce a budget?
They actually can't, Richard, because of the,
It's nothing to do with us.
they've postponed any decisions about the mergers until, what's the date? June?
Wow.
But
it's not under our
decisions
purview.
about the it's nothing actually the school board can do anything about.
It's not in our purview, and it's not on the agenda, so
Yeah.
we should probably stop discussing it.
Thank you. Okay, so,
here's your.
is there any more? I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session at 7:24 PM per VSA 1, VSA Section 313A1,
To discuss
I
personnel.
so
to
moved.
discuss personnel matters. Richard so moves.
I'll second.
Gordon seconds. All in favor, Veranda? Aye. Gabby?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Sheila, aye. Thank you.
Okay,
We are reconvening the meeting at 8 PM, having exited executive session, and we have the following two actions. We are going to ask Dan, Gordon, and Peter to work to modify the road crew performance review form for future use. And we will develop a transition plan over the next couple of years to plan for a new road commissioner at the unfortunate time that Danny might consider retiring.
Totally on Dan's.
And we absolutely want to
Calendar.
appreciate the road crew for all the work that they do. So,
Do you need motions for this? Is that why you're stating the actions?
thank you. Would you make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Would you second?
Yes, so we don't need to poll everybody anymore?
No, because Richard is off the phone. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Gabby? What? Did you say aye?
I did.
Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
You move?
I move it.
Somebody?
I will second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we adjourn the meeting at 8:02 PM. Could I have the copies?
Thank you.